Yeah, I come. What's up, guys? This was Stacey. I'm running for Stefan. So, what I'm about to react to Wansee Entertainment, Part 17, and basically Spooky's scary Monday eyes. But no, I'm not correcting you. I make my own. And so I have been on this a while ago. So I know I'm gonna have a lot of watch of them. So this, you know. Before we even start that video, get you some freaking water. Oops, my bad. Get you some lemon lamb. Yeah, lemon lamb. And some Cheetos. And rice with Doritos.
This happened about 4 years ago, in December of 2015. Me and 5 of my friends have our own business editing photos and videos for social media content creators. And because of this, we tend to have a lot of spare time on our hands. We used to go on road trips to a local lake that has a few nice spots to camp at, and a ski resort. We usually went there on our days off. One week, the 6 of us finished all of our projects early, so we had a few days off. We decided to drive to the lake. I won't be using their real names for obvious reasons, so I'll call them Kevin, Steven, Brittany, Katie, and Josh.
My brother named Steven.
Katie and Brittany rode in Katie's old sports car, and Steven and I rode on our motorcycles. Usually, Kevin and Josh took Steven's Jeep. But on this trip, Josh had just bought a new Sprinter van, which the previous owner had converted into a 2-person camper, so Kevin decided to ride with Josh. When we arrived, we skied, had some really delicious camping food, and listened to Josh brag about his new van. It was a pretty normal trip. On the last day, we all packed up to head home. About 2 hours into the trip back home, we were a little hungry, so we stopped at a gas station to grab some snacks. We all parked our vehicles outside and went into the gas station together, which was kind of foolish. We were in there maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and the car's door was left open the whole time. When we came outside, we had a huge shock waiting for us. Josh's van was gone. There was a huge dent on the side of Katie's car, and another dent on the side of an old truck in the parking lot, which I assume belonged to an employee. We were so panicked at that moment, so we immediately called the police. But since we were a little off the grid, the police took 15 minutes to arrive, and by then, we knew the chances of them being able to find Josh's van was slim to none. The scariest thing about it was that Kevin brought his work laptop on the trip, and I knew that Kevin didn't have a password set up on it. We waited for another 2 or so hours while the police searched the area, but they couldn't find anything. They told us to go home, and they would contact us if they found the stolen van.
Damn.
Kevin and Josh rode with the girls in Katie's car, while Steven and I rode our motorcycles, following them very closely. We didn't stop once during the remaining 3-hour trip home. Fast forward 2 or 3 weeks later, we received a frantic call from Josh. He said that the police contacted him and that the van had been found. All 6 of us showed up to see the van, and the van had somehow been rolled on its side and was left in a ditch near the highway, about an hour from where it had been stolen. Once they got it out of the ditch and flipped it upright, the police let us look inside to see if we could salvage any personal items. Sure enough, Kevin's laptop was gone, along with a set of kitchen knives that Josh had used for making kebabs. The most disturbing thing, though, was that once we got the busted driver's side door open, we saw that both seats were stained a deep dark red in multiple places, and the dashboard had slash marks all over it. At that point, we were really afraid of the van. Josh let the police take the van for further inspection, but we never heard what happened to it, or who the blood belonged to.
Wow. Hey, I don't know what just happened, but I give it that shot. It was scary. I know some of y'all be like, hey, this isn't scary. Alright, this is a different horror story about the...
My name is Lewis, and I live in Switzerland.
Okay.
This story happened 5 years ago during the winter holidays. It was an icy cold day, and the snow was falling continuously, so we had to warm the house all day long with the firewood, putting it into the fireplace. My dad told us all the time that we should take care of the firewood. However, for the next days, we didn't do anything but just played Nintendo. Eventually, we noticed late around 9 p.m. that we had run out of wood. Dad got angry from our house. He was a really tall guy with a long beard and wore a black and white lumberjack shirt as a classic lumberjack. Anyway, at first he seemed very talkative. We ordered 2 bags full of wood, which were about 50 kilograms. He said, "Okay, hold on. It'll take about 15 minutes to cut and wrap everything."
Okay.
All of a sudden, my sister had to go to the restroom. He said that he would let her know where the toilet is, so she followed him. I was waiting for about 15 minutes, and then I noticed the place was silent. I saw neither my sister nor the man. I called my sister's name, but there was no answer. Then I got a message from my dad that if we bought the wood, then we should come home immediately. According to the local news, the police were looking for a serial killer in the village 50 kilometers from here. Dad also attached a picture, and unfortunately, he looked very similar to the lumberjack. My heart dropped. I wanted to scream, but then he came with the bag of wood suddenly. He was smiling, but I could feel that something was weird. He looked joyful. "Please, ask me where's your sister," he said and winked at me. "She's certainly not far away from you." Then I noticed the red stains on his shirt. I nervously opened a wood sack, and the pink hair clip of my sister came out. I was full of anger. I grabbed a wooden bag with all my strength and hit the man. He screamed and fell on the floor, and I pulled out my pocket knife and stabbed him. 2 or 3, many times. Suddenly I heard a loud scream out of nowhere. "Stop, Lewis!" It was my sister. "That was a prank!" She was crying. I couldn't think straight. My head was all messed up. What have I done? I killed the wrong guy. I dropped the knife and stared at his cold body. But then I recognized that I had no time. I knew that we had to get rid of this body quickly while we were still alone in the shop without employees or customers. So I quickly looked around and found a hidden room, which was locked. We kicked the door and pushed him inside. And we were about to turn on the light in the room to find a cover, but then what I found was a huge shock. The room was full of people who had been cut in several pieces, and the floor was covered with blood. The lumberjack was the real serial killer. We were so terrified that we quickly covered him with some fabric and then ran out of the shop. We ran home as fast as we could.
Okay, he accidentally killed a random serial. He not random, but he accidentally killed a real serial killer. A serial killer. But it's like he don't want to kill the kids because it's sad. But he thought that he killed her and then all of something. Oh man, that's too much.
My dad asked us what happened, but we couldn't tell our parents anything. Since that day, we always made sure that we keep enough wood before the heavy snow. And I'm still wondering if the police found all the bodies at that shop.
Oh, that's it? Oh, somebody gotta tell me that's one of my top favorite ones so far. Nobody can tell me that's not my top favorite one. I had a dream. Well, dreams can be something real.
My name is Melanie. This happened when I was 6 years old. In 1989, I lived in San Bernardino, California. One night, after watching my favorite TV show, I decided to sleep with my mom. I used to sleep alone, but somehow I went to her bed and she smiled at me. While I was sleeping with her, I had a dream that I was at a park. It was sunny, and there were a lot of big trees around. I was in the car, and my mom was standing on the corner of the sidewalk. I struggled to open the door, but it didn't open at all. As I was pounding on the back of the car window, crying for her to help me, she just stood there, smiling and waving to me. Then I woke up, crying hysterically. Mom also woke up and rubbed my back, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to repeat the horrible dream. Nothing. I told her and fell back asleep without any more bad dreams that night. After a year, we moved to Las Vegas, and I was getting ready to turn 7 in a couple of weeks. My older brother, sister, and I went to the airport to visit my aunt who lives in Washington for a while. After finishing check-in, we went through security and got ready to board the plane. When I looked back at my mom, she was smiling and waving at me. It was the same way as in my dream. I couldn't dismiss the weird feeling during the flight. But despite the anxiety, we eventually arrived at my aunt's house peacefully. We were about to have a big party since my birthday was coming. And on my birthday, my mom called to greet me and said that she loves me. That was the last time I ever heard her speak. Everything was all right. I was so happy at the time. I was waiting for my mom to come over here and spend time with us. A few days later, my uncle told us to sit down in the living room, as he had something very important to tell us. I noticed that my older sister was sitting in the corner chair and was crying quietly. He proceeded to tell us that my mother was no longer with us. At first, I couldn't understand what he was saying. He then told us that she died from a car accident. There was nothing more devastating than that day. Everybody in the living room was crying with such piercing sadness. Now I've grown up, but I still have dreams of my mom smiling and waving at me. I hope this story urges whoever is watching this video to cherish your loved ones, because it could be the last day you see or speak to them.
If you literally have a dream like that, and it really come to your life, I would never sleep again. I'd be drinking some dang on coffee. Let y'all know that I hate TikTok. I don't like it. It sucks.
My name is Gabby, and this story is my true experience. When I was 11 years old, my family and I moved to a big house in a tiny town. Our new house was located at the highest point, which was at the end of the town. When we bought the house, the owner explained to us that his wife had just passed away due to cancer, and that the house was very precious to her, so she never wanted to sell it. Still, the owner said the house was too big and lonely for him, since all their kids were grown up and already moved to other cities. However, during the final part of the deal, he suddenly changed his mind and didn't want to sell the house. But it was too late. The owner stormed out of the office saying that it was his house and that we were going to regret it. Anyway, this was during the time my dad was sent overseas because he was in the military. So my mom, my older brother, and I had to live by ourselves for 6 months. During that time, we had really weird experiences. Sometimes we would wake up to the sound of a goat in our backyard. It would last the whole night. The next morning, we talked to the neighbors and asked if one of them had goats, but none of them did. So at first, we just decided to ignore the issue and leave it alone. Now, just for your information, our house design was kind of odd. Downstairs, we had my room, my brother's room, my soon-to-be-born sister's room, and a weird wide walkway that led to the backyard. And upstairs, we had a kitchen, living room, and my parents' room. The downstairs was underground, and the upstairs was technically the first floor. Anyway, one night, I decided to sleep with my mom, so I went upstairs with my brother. Later that night, we heard a sharp scream coming from downstairs. It sounded like it was my dad's voice screaming for help. He was calling all of our names. My mom rushed out of the room and was ready to run downstairs. All of a sudden, she stopped at the top of the staircase and looked at us with a weird expression on her face. "But your dad is still in Colombia. How could he..." And the next thing I saw was my mom abruptly falling down the stairs. That moment was so horrible. It was like someone pushed her backwards before she was able to resist. My brother called the police and I ran down the stairs to check my mom and see if she was okay. We struggled to bring her up the stairs, but we managed to make it to her room. When the police and ambulance arrived, they took my mom to a hospital and left 2 officers with us that night. I was crying the entire night, and we were so afraid. Due to falling down the stairs, Mom was injured, and unfortunately, we lost our new family member. The most chilling part was that they found large handprints on my mom's back, as if she was pushed by someone. This led to an investigation, but they had to leave the case open because no one was found in our house, other than the 3 of us. We all suffered and went through a hard time that year, especially my mom. She slid into depression. When she recovered, we moved the following year. However, more things happened throughout the year, but not as bad as the previous one. Just footsteps, broken plates, or similar stuff to that. We put that house on the market when we left, but no one has contacted us. One thing is for certain. I hope that we never have to go back to that creepy house again. I really, really don't want to go back.
Well, y'all thought that teddy bear in the trash can. If y'all saw that chip that just fell, I don't care what talking to. Ooh, secret room.
It was late in the evening and I was driving on the highway. I was coming back home from my friend's party. I was so tired at that time, so I decided to check in at a hotel near the village. The hotel was not too big, seemed normal, but was kind of creepy. After finishing check-in, I got my key and the room number. My room number was 23. I walked to the hallway. As I was passing by the other doors, I heard a kid's giggling voice from the room number 20, which was located just 2 doors away from my room. I stopped walking. Then I noticed that the door on this room looked different from the others. The door looked very old and it had a big keyhole, and it was big enough to peek inside the room. I was actually curious about the inside, so I looked into the room, and there was a girl who was sitting on the bed with her face down to the floor. I couldn't see her face clearly because her hair was all covered. She was wearing a white dress like the 1990s style, and it looked dirty. I thought it was weird, but soon I just disregarded it. So I headed to my room, locked the door, and just passed out. The next morning, I was walking the hallway again. I didn't know why, but I instantly had this feeling that I wanted to look through that keyhole again in room 20. She was a whole red color. I thought maybe she saw me yesterday, that I was looking through the hole. So she probably covered up the hole with a red cloth or something. I thought that was childish, but cute. So I smiled, stepped back, and headed to the counter. Before leaving, I asked the lady at the counter, "Hey, what's going on in that room 20? Why does the door look different, and why that girl stays alone?" She stared at me for a while, and then began to talk. "Oh, you mean the room number 20. There used to be a family who checked in that room when this hotel wasn't renovated before. The couple had a daughter and stayed in here for their vacation. But then, they killed their daughter in that room. And when the cops arrived, the couple killed themselves, too. But the weirdest part about it was, after that, lots of our guests told the staff that they saw the same girl who was wandering in hallways. And they all said that the girl's eyes were too red, as just like she was shedding tears of blood. What she told me shocked me. My heart was pounding and I couldn't even speak anything. Then, what was that red thing? Was she looking at me through the door, just like I was watching her?
Oh, what did he say? What did you do this to? Oh.
Even speak anything. Then, what was that red thing? Was she looking at me through the door, just like I was watching her?
Hey, dude. It could be something silver, and he could have just got stabbed in the eye. Like,
Will Invisalign aligners really work for my smile?
Is there a better alternative to braces?
Only Invisalign aligners use Smart Track technology.
It moves teeth more comfortably and predictably, and in many cases, it works faster than braces.
oh, how do you know her eye is red?
That day, I saw him on one of my usual walks along the bridge. He was a tall,
Hey, you ain't gonna say half my name is something.
middle-aged man in a cheap-looking suit. I approached him carefully, not wanting to spook him. I asked, "Sir?" He turned around quickly with his face drenched in sweat. "Who are you?" he asked nervously.
You scared of her?
I answered with a smile. "I'm Mandy. You should move away from here. It's pretty dangerous," I said, pointing to the edge of the bridge where he was standing. "What are you doing here?" He looked at me for a few seconds before speaking again. "Oh, I come here often. It's quiet, so I like that." I smiled at him again. He sounded calmer, but wouldn't meet my eyes. I spoke softly. "Well, my parents know I'm here. They know I like to help people like you." He turned to me, and I looked at him without blinking. I knew that he wanted to jump. The look on his face changed to one of, "It's just a fall, but the aftermath is even worse." His eyes widened, and he shouted, "Get out of here, kid. You don't even know what you're talking about." He sounded more alarmed than angered. I continued to look at him as he breathed heavily. Then I slowly pointed to the pictures and flowers attached to the railings just behind him. "Actually, I do." He looked in the direction I was pointing, taking a few seconds to process what he was seeing. He then turned around slowly to look at me, pure horror on his face. How can you?" At that moment, I knew I had saved him, at least for now. He stood there for a moment longer, frozen and unsure of what to do. Then he didn't say any words, simply turned around and ran as fast as he could. I dropped my shoulders and breathed a sigh of relief. I walked over to the railings and just sat there, looking at the pictures. "We miss you, Mandy," was written on a big card decorated with hearts and flowers right next to my yearbook photo. "Gone too soon," said another, surrounded by teddy bears, clothes, and lots of flowers. It all looked so pretty. "My name is Mandy. I was 19 when I died, and now I try to help people live."
So she basically, oh, she's dead. Okay, I see why they do that. I see why he was scared of her. She's dead. Oh man, you mess with a Ouija board, you going down.
Mom,
I don't care how much strong you is.
I don't like tea.
I don't even care. And it's a heart. Nah, never mind.
For this story, my name will be Charlie. Years ago, my first year of college, I lived in a dorm. But if only I knew what was going to happen. I earned a scholarship to college for baseball, and all the players lived in one dorm. Being that I was a freshman, they roomed me with a senior so he could show me what right looks like. He was a pretty tough guy who no one would mess with, so I felt like I was in good hands. It was the winter, and by that time of the school year, I was pretty set in my ways and comfortable. I was invited to a house party that one of the sororities were throwing, so I went with a few friends. When we got there, it was like any other party. People were outside, and some were inside having fun. While inside, there was music playing, along with people playing video games in one room, and it looked like a board game going on in the other. That was upstairs. After a while, I went upstairs to see why anyone would be playing a board game at a party. When I got to the room, I noticed that it was the most quiet room in the house, which was odd to me. When I walked in the room, there were 4 girls and a guy sitting at a table. I asked what was going on, and they said they were using the Ouija board. I thought it sounded interesting, so I joined. But I've never really believed in that type of stuff. While we were messing with the board, they said that there was a girl in the room, but I think that one of the other people that were playing moved it, so I left. That's when unexplainable stuff would happen to me in my dorm. I'd hear laughing in our hallways at odd times of the night, knocks on the window, and I started to have bad dreams. I told my roommate, but he told me it was stress from our upcoming midterms. That went on for about 2 weeks. Then one night everything changed for both of us. I remember it being a Thursday night when this happened. I was asleep in the middle of the night, and all I heard was, "Charlie! Charlie! Charlie, wake up!" I remember making noises and being half asleep, but I acknowledged him. Then he said something that woke me up immediately. "Charlie, what the fuck is that in the corner?" I looked in the corner of the room and I swear there was a silhouette of a girl. I was so afraid that I jumped off the top bunk and I told my roommate to get up and run, but he was so petrified. He was under his covers quivering. Then she spoke.
Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was play with you.
I told him I'm out and we both ran out of our room. He was yelling as she's talking. After that, we were both so shaken that we never went back to that room. We called the police, but when they came, they never found any girl. I don't know if it was because of the house party, Ouija board game, or coincidence, but that was a moment that I'll never forget. To this day, I still hear odd noises throughout the night wherever I go.
Why did you sell it to somebody just be funny? It was right behind her. Oh my god. Stupid people.